So I was going through some really old pictures and found this old thing. You see that red one with a guy laying on top of it? Well, that's me and that's my car, and I'm gonna make that. This is a 2010 Ford Mustang GT. The only real difference between this and my Mustang is that engine. That is a 5.0 V8, and I have a 3.7 V6. Outside of that, pretty much everything else is identical to my 2011 beautiful Mustang. In terms of game plan, I'm planning on using a flake gun. So this is a dry flake gun made by Spray Gunner. I've got some red flake. Now, I've never really used this before, but I mean, how hard could it be? It's the gun that shoots flake. But before all that, let's get some primer down. So, starting with some Createx Autoborne Sealer in gray. So while I'm priming the hood, do want to say something. This is a new camera. If you see anything weird, I am still learning. Just apologizing in advance. Beyond that, let's move forward. Whew, that's a lot of stuff to prime, but here we go. So that's everything between all the main frames, the road wheels, the exhaust, the engine, whatnot. Everybody's primed. Should be good, clean starting slate to move forward. Now, every good candy coat starts with a nice black undercoat. And so at least from here on, we're going to focus entirely on the body. I'll show about the interior later, but let's kind of start with the more important, or at least more exciting thing going on. And after some minor sanding, gotta keep it all smooth like, we got the first base coat ready to go. Now, given my last arduous adventure with candy, I wanted to take it as easy and simple as possible. Yeah, I'm still doing flake, but I am gonna do some level of candy. So the colors for today are going to be Createx H2O products of blood red and golden. It's a silver, I don't actually know what it's fully called, but it's a nice silver. So here's my current easy way of doing this. We're going to take some of that aniline dye, that's the Createx H2O. We're going to just throw some of that in a cup and then add the silver base to it and mix it up. Now, if you add a lot of the aniline dye, what'll happen is as you lay it out, it's going to kind of create that depth effect of candy. Now, it's not a full, true depth effect, but hey, it's close enough, and in my case, easy is what I'm going for. Which will leave you with a final product that looks a little something like this. Throwing this into an airbrush, we can start spraying down the hood. Now, I'm taking it slow for my first time, but towards the end I kind of figured out you can kind of let this go, dump it on the piece, and it'll actually still turn out really well. Because of all that aniline dye in it, it sprays quite nice. I mean, other than a little bit of tip dry and whatnot, but she lays really nicely. But enough babbling on about this, let's kind of bring this up close and take a peek at it. It will dry more of a satiny matte finish, but whew, that's a good looking part. And in case you wanted to see it again, here's the hood of the car sprayed at 2 times speed. With it being this close, you should be able to make out some of the metal flake, or at least I can looking at it in post. And so once it dries, it kind of goes to this semi-gloss, almost kind of matte sheen. It's not really that pretty, but the cool thing is because it is aniline dye, it is still reactivatable. Well, that's a word. It still can be reactivated and kind of brought up into whatever clear you put onto it. Which could sound like a good thing given all the candy I was talking about, but I'm doing flake. So I'll use some Createx 4040 to stop the bleeding effect into whatever clears I put above it. Anyway, after I'm done spraying this, I'm going to let this dry and then we can start on the main event. So this is the flake I have. It is made by Custom Creative. It's red. I have no clue what size it is. I bought it literally when I bought the spray gun. Yeah, that's about it. Although I do gotta say, playing with the popsicle stick and this stuff, like, man, just watching it fall down just looks so cool. Like, I don't even know if the camera captures all of how cool this is. Either way, it's time to start laying down some of this flake. But I always believe in testing my equipment before I use it, so let's put down a protective box, screw this thing on, pump up the air pressure, and see what happens. So I was hoping this would show up a little bit better, especially with that white box. But if you look kind of in the middle right next to the white box, you can see a lot more red slowly appearing. But it's do or die time. So we're going to start with some clear, put as much dry time, extender, whatever you want to call it in it. Give the whole thing a very liberal spray. Quickly grab the flake gun and start laying down some flake. And no matter what you do, remember, you're committed to this, so if you start somewhere, you gotta keep going. And, well, let me pull this off and I'll show you the final product. Yeah, it looks kind of cool, but then it doesn't. So as you kind of look further and further, especially on this side here, there's a giant cluster right by the handle. Then you get some just bare spots, raw spots. So it's really bumpy, which I guess I should have thought about that beforehand. But man, I really wasn't expecting the clear to dry that fast. I mean, I even went back and tried to add some more and it still just kept bouncing off. Oh well, always told myself to roll with the punches. So I started weighing my options, you know, what could I do? I thought about trying to like scrape them off or something, but with how complex some of these shapes are, I wasn't confident I could get it smooth where I'm happy with it. And I could just kind of try and clear the crap out of it until it's got enough layers that either A, I can get it somewhat smooth, but even then I'm going to lose all my details. So I thought, you know what, I got some help. Let me grab a tub big enough to submerge the piece, and then some stripper. This is super clean. Now I've used this stuff before on, it was actually another automotive piece. It was a 1996 truck, and I had to leave that in there for, oh geez, it was like 24 hours or more than that. Which, other than the horribly designed container that gets it all over my desk, it really doesn't affect the model too much. It might make it a tiny bit softer for a while, but other than that, I didn't have any issues stripping that truck. So I should be okay with the Mustang. After letting it sit overnight and grabbing some PPE, we can take a look at this. Notice the fluid is now much more red color, and that's the aniline dye coming off, as well as it's really bubbly and nasty. So as you can see, it doesn't just come right off immediately. It does take a little bit of force, but just a soft toothbrush and I can basically scrape it back. So I'm not going to make you sit through the whole thing, it's not that exciting. Just wanted to show in case something happens and I flake up, I got something that'll cover me. Not that I want it to. But anyway, here's the main body stripped away. You can see there's still a little bit of that Kratex Autoborn sealer, but other than that, it's really close to bare metal. Plastic. Same thing. If I did a little bit more elbow grease, I probably could have gotten it completely back to the yellow plastic. Anyway, keeping on a positive note, here's the rear bumper. It was unscathed from my flake up, so what we can do is just gloss over it and call it a day. This is high gloss varnish by Liquitex. I actually really like this stuff. So it does take a little bit of flow improver, and you do got to be careful with tip dry. That's like its biggest detriment, but you can start spraying this almost straight and it dries really quickly and creates this beautiful finish. So of course I did that across the entire outer shell. Everything's given a nice, probably a little bit too much, but heavy coat of that gloss. Really looks pretty. And the body. Oh yeah, so after stripping it, went back, had to remake some of that red paint, but sprayed across the whole thing, didn't use any of that bleed checker, and then, as you just saw, gave everything a nice thick-ish coat of gloss. If you recall, I have 2 stripes on the top of my Mustang going from the hood that go all the way to the spoiler. Technically Le Mans stripes, but I was too lazy to actually complete them as true Le Mans stripes. But since I need to make them, let's use some tape. This is tape by Limeline, and it is really nice tape. I totally recommend it. But after setting up my lines, the last step is to cover up all the nice bits so I don't get overspray on them. Oh wow. But it's just a simple spray some black, let it dry, peel off the tape, and inspect some beautiful crisp lines. Now for some detail work. We gotta take some of these red parts and make them black. Same thing with the rear bumper and the front bumper, but rotated. And after some other finer detail work, we can call this body finished. I will say during this process, it was right about here that I'm like, that's my car. Like that's it. But smaller, of course. Next on the list is the undercarriage. Now this video is getting a little bit long, so I'm just going to kind of briefly go over it. So, rust on the drive shaft, protective rust, thanks Ford. And the rest of it is in this beige kind of color. Yeah, nothing too crazy. Blacked out some of the plastic areas like the fuel tank and whatnot, as well as in the wheel wells. All of the metal bits are in a neutral gray. The engine is just blacked, and that's it. And really the only other important thing I want to show is the dash. Now I've done some custom work, so the center console is actually completely custom painted, as well as the airbag cover and all the vent stuff. That is all in a similar-ish red to the exterior. Something a little bit like this. Laying out all the interior pieces, we have the main lower shell, whatever you want to call it, the 2 sides, so that's for each of the doors, as well as the rear seat, the center console, and then the 2 front seats. After a little bit of super glue, we have the full interior. Now you may notice there's some red on the doors as well as in the back seat. That is some red thread that I glued to those areas to replicate the welts that I installed years ago. But it's time to begin the marriage ceremony. Perfect. Just kidding. Let me get the real thing properly attached. Yup, that's it. That's the interior of my vehicle. So now we've got all the pieces together. Let's kind of go to the very end, final step. And yes, that is my car, but smaller. There's still a little bit of imperfections here and there. You can see a little bit of a run on this side. For the most part, it is really smooth. In fact, it's really smooth because this is actually a completely different shell. Didn't want to talk too much about this, but when I was going and adding the windows on the first shell, I was like, let's just super glue them. If I spray enough kicker on it, it won't cause any issues. And I fogged it up. Which might not have been end of the world, but I was like, alright, well, it looked fine once the kicker was on it, so what if I just clear the thing? So I did. And then I kept going and started clearing the outside for whatever dumb reason. Ended up dropping it, nicked the paint. It got bad. Bad enough to the point that I was like, I think I'd have to strip this and start over. And the Liquitex, I've never tried stripping that, and I don't think it would, so I decided I would get a new kit and redo all my hard work. The 3rd time. But that is going to be it for today's episode. If you like what you see, feel free to give this video a like, as well as if you want to see more content, feel free to subscribe. If you see something that you're like, geez, that looks terrible, that's wrong, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, Have a wonderful day.